You've probably heard the line, jackfruit is a great meat substitute. It gets thrown around a lot, menu descriptions, recipe titles, viral videos. But if you stop at that sentence, you miss the point entirely. Jackfruit isn't in vegan cooking because it tastes like meat. It's in the pan because of what it does. Let's start with the first misunderstanding. When people hear jackfruit, they picture something bright and tropical, sugary, almost dessert-like. That image isn't wrong. Ripe jackfruit is a honeyed, fragrant thing that belongs in sweet dishes, smoothies, fruit salads. But that's not the fruit showing up in your pulled pork sandwich or your barbecue taco. The jackfruit used in savory cooking is picked young, green, and neutral. It hasn't developed sugar or dramatic flavor yet. It's quiet, it's mild, and that makes it surprisingly useful. Think about texture for a second. Cooking is not just about flavor, it's about structure. The way something behaves when you bite it, shred it, or slow cook it is as important, sometimes more important than its taste. Young jackfruit has long, fibrous strands tucked into its core. When you simmer it or slow roast it, those fibers come apart in long, tender shreds. That's not because anyone engineered it to imitate anything. That's simply how the fruit grows. Those fibers give you a familiar mouthfeel, shredded, chunky, sauce-holding. That single physical characteristic is what opened doors. So how did jackfruit slide into vegan kitchens and stay there? As more people cut back on animal products, the kitchen changed. Home cooks and restaurants needed things that delivered substance and familiarity, ingredients that could sit in a sandwich or a taco and feel like a full, comforting bite. They needed something that would soak up a marinade or cling to sauce without disintegrating. Jackfruit fit the bill. It doesn't demand to be the star. It volunteers volume and texture and then gets out of the way, letting spices and sauces do the heavy lifting. This is worth pausing on. Jackfruit is adaptable. It takes on the flavor profile you give it. Add a smoky barbecue rub and slow cook it with tomato and molasses, and you've got a sandwich topping that behaves like pulled meat. Toss it in curry spices and coconut milk, and it melts into the braise, catching every nuance of the sauce. Put it in a stew, and it anchors the dish, absorbing broth, holding its shape, adding bite. It does all this because it's neutral enough not to compete with the flavors around it, and fibrous enough to offer a satisfying chew. Now let's address the protein confusion. A lot of the chatter online makes it sound like jackfruit will take care of your protein needs. It won't. Jackfruit is not high in protein. Vegan cooks know this. They pair jackfruit with legumes, tofu, tempeh, or whole grains to round out a meal nutritionally. Jackfruit is filling and has texture, but it's not used as the primary protein source. It's a partner on the plate, not the nutritional centerpiece. Understanding that separation, function versus nutrition, keeps expectations realistic and recipes balanced. Why do people keep comparing it to meat? This is more cultural than culinary. You're used to certain textures, shredded, sauced, slow-cooked. Those formats are familiar comfort foods. Jackfruit helps make plant-based meals feel recognizable without pretending to be something else. It's an intermediate, not a convincing copy, not a culinary imposter, but a way to create a similar eating experience. That familiarity lowers resistance. It makes the idea of eating differently less intimidating. That's powerful. Food isn't just about what's on your plate, it's about what that food says to you. Jackfruit communicates, this is something I know how to eat, and that's a big part of its appeal. Of course, not everyone reacts the same way. Food is deeply emotional, tied to memory, identity, and comfort. When jackfruit shows up claiming a role in a beloved dish, some people push back. For them, jackfruit represents change, new habits, a reshaping of tradition. Criticism isn't always about flavor, it's often about what the ingredient symbolizes. For some, that's threatening. For others, it's inviting. Both reactions are valid, but the critique that jackfruit is a fake food misses the point. It's just an ingredient doing its job. Why does jackfruit keep cropping up in recipes, menus, and social feeds, even when trends come and go? There are practical reasons. It's easy to work with. Canned young jackfruit is widely available, shelf-stable, and affordable. It's consistent. When you open a can, you get predictable texture and behavior. It's neutral enough to be stretched across cuisines, which is a boon for cooks looking to plug it into tacos, curries, sandwiches, or stews. And it's inexpensive compared with many plant-based meat alternatives. You don't need fancy marketing. Once cooks discover that it reliably performs, they keep using it. So what does jackfruit actually do in a dish? It provides three main things: volume, texture, and bite. Volume means it fills the plate. You're not left snacking on air. Texture means it gives your teeth something to work with, a shredded meaty mouthfeel that holds sauce and stands up in a sandwich. Bite means it has presence in a dish without screaming for attention. Because of those qualities, jackfruit often shows up in pulled-style sandwiches, tacos, curries, stews, and slow-cooked comfort meals. In each of these, it's doing the same basic job: structure first, flavor second. That's a subtle but important reframing. Instead of asking, "What meat does jackfruit taste like?" ask, "What role does this ingredient serve?" Once you change the question, it's easier to see why jackfruit is useful. It's not pretending to be meat, it's solving a cooking problem. That functional mindset also opens up better ways to cook with it. Think about technique: slow simmering, braising, marinating, methods that coax the fibers apart and let the flavors sink in. Think about pairing: beans or lentils for protein, greens for balance, grains for heft. Use sharp acid to cut through richness, fresh herbs to brighten, and spice blends that lean into what you want the dish to say. Let's get practical for a moment. If you're trying jackfruit for the first time, what should you do? Start with canned young jackfruit in water or brine, not syrup, not ripe. Rinse it, drain it, and shred it with your hands or 2 forks. Simmer it with a flavorful liquid barbecue sauce, adobo, curry paste, or a tomato-based braise until it soaks up flavor and pulls apart easily. If you want a crisped texture, pan fry briefly after simmering to get some edges caramelized. Serve it alongside beans, rice, or pickled vegetables to round out the plate. Simple techniques, big payoff. If you're a cook who cares about the story behind ingredients, jackfruit is interesting because it represents a shift in how plant-based food evolves. Early vegan substitutes often aimed for direct mimicry, fake everything. Jackfruit, by contrast, shows up because it fills a practical gap. It's not trying to be an exact replica of meat. It's being used for its natural properties. That's a more honest kind of culinary progress, using what works rather than forcing something to be what it's not. And that, in a nutshell, is what jackfruit represents in vegan cooking: function over imitation. It's a reminder that food can be reinvented by paying attention to texture and behavior, not just flavor profiles. The ingredient isn't a symbol of failure or triumph, it's a tool. Use it well, and it helps you build dishes that feel familiar and satisfying. Ignore that lesson, and you'll keep seeing jackfruit as a novelty or a threat. Finally, remember this: jackfruit isn't pretending. It's not trying to fool anyone. It's doing what it's always done: growing long fibers that shred, soaking up liquids, holding sauce. Once you stop asking what it's trying to replace, it becomes easier to see what it actually is: a useful, adaptable ingredient that solves a particular problem in the kitchen. It's not the whole meal. It's part of a balanced plate. So the next time you see a recipe or menu that calls for jackfruit, take a breath and read it as an ingredient choice, not a statement of culinary identity. Look at how it's used, what method, what pairings, and you'll see the logic. Jackfruit's job is simple: provide structure, carry flavor, and make plant-based dishes feel satisfying. That's why it keeps showing up. You'll find that once you stop judging it for what it isn't, you can start appreciating what it is. And when you cook with that mindset, jackfruit does exactly what a good ingredient should. It quietly does its job, and the meal comes together.